Hey there, and welcome to another one of our Brexit Explained videos. You might have noticed Boris Johnson talking a lot about no deal. That's not really surprising. He is the Prime Minister now, and the UK leaving the EU without a deal is more than a slight possibility. That being said, we are going to dive deeper into Johnson's no deal plans. In this video, we'll be looking at why Johnson is so keen for a no deal, and what he might be hoping to gain from it. Before we get to that though, I want to ask a quick favour from you. Normally we ask you guys to sign up to our Patreon or to buy merch, but this time it's super simple. Please subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. Getting subscribers obviously helps us reach more people, but it also improves our credibility when we're trying to reach out to experts and potential interviewees. Also, as a little incentive, once we reach 300,000 subscribers, we have 3 major announcements about TLDR that we'll share, and make sure you watch the end of this video for a tease of one of them. So hit the subscribe button to help us get one step closer. Also, if you're already subscribed, consider hitting the bell icon to get notified when we release a video. Anyway, let's get on with the video. So, ever since the leadership race began, Johnson has been sounding particularly optimistic about the prospects of no deal, and actually seems to be pursuing it as a government policy. Johnson hasn't explicitly said this, and has in fact said that leaving without a deal is a remote possibility, or 1 in a million. But he has chucked out the current withdrawal agreement and refused to negotiate until the backstop is scrapped in its entirety. That certainly makes it look like he's pursuing a no-deal Brexit, as the EU have made it clear they're not going to start any negotiations on that basis. Johnson has also made all of his cabinet ministers publicly agree to keeping no deal on the table, refusing to rule out proroguing Parliament to force a no deal through, and appointed a largely pro-no deal cabinet. Something we actually discussed in a video last week. There's a link to that in the description below if you're interested. So, here's the big question. Why is Johnson so keen for a no deal? Well, there are 2 obvious options. Maybe he truly thinks that no deal Brexit is the right policy, as it will finally allow the UK to set its own independent trade policy. Or at least he thinks that it won't be that bad, and at least it will allow him to win back Brexit Party supporters. The other option is that he agrees with the majority of experts, and thinks that no deal is a bad idea, both for the country and for the electoral prospects of the Conservative Party. We're going to assume this is the case for the rest of the video. Quick disclaimer, we're not passing judgment on the merits of no deal here, so please don't fill the comments with messages accusing us of being biased. We're just speculating on what Johnson might believe. Anyway, if we're assuming that Johnson doesn't really want a no deal, why might he be sounding so keen for it? Well, we think that there's 3 main possibilities, but there may be way more, so if you think we've missed an obvious one, make sure to let us know in the comments. So the first, and probably the most obvious possibility, is that Johnson is trying to bluff the EU. He's hoping that the EU, and more specifically Ireland, will be so scared of a no deal that they'll blink, and decide to offer him some sort of new deal, ideally with some sort of time limit or exit mechanism for the backstop, which Johnson will then find easier to get through Parliament. This might not be a super successful strategy though, as the EU and Ireland have said that they're keeping the backstop, and the Irish electorate are also very much in favour of the backstop. While the EU are definitely worried about no deal, they think that no deal will hurt the UK more than the EU, and that the UK's Parliament will most likely find a way to block no deal before it ever ends up happening. So, as it stands, it doesn't look like they're going to be blinking. However, to be fair to Johnson, the EU haven't been tested on this principle just yet. That's because everyone knew that May was never going to actually go for a no deal, and that if needed, Parliament would stop it. For the threat of no deal and negotiations to carry any weight, Johnson has to prove that it's both a real legal and political possibility. To prove it's a legal possibility, he has to prove that Parliament can't stop it. And to prove that it's a political possibility, he has to prove that he can and will go for it. Both of these really depend on public opinion, and I'll try and explain why. The best insurance that Johnson can have against Parliament choosing to block no deal is public opinion. If Johnson starts polling really well, and the most recent polls do suggest that he's doing alright, with this data from YouGov showing a big spike for the Conservatives when Johnson took over. Because of this, opposition MPs are likely to be very wary when triggering a general election in order to block no deal, because if they do, they might lose their seats. When May was in office, every opposition party was desperate for a general election. The Conservatives were occasionally polling less than 20%, and everyone from Labour to the Lib Dems thought that they stood a good chance of gaining some seats. If Johnson does succeed in taking back the Brexit Party vote, Parliament is way less likely to push for a general election, for fear of giving Johnson a massive majority in Parliament. In this case, no deal becomes both a legal and political possibility. It's a legal possibility because the only real mechanism that Parliament has to stop him is a no confidence vote, which they won't use if it looks like Johnson will win a landslide in a general election. And it's a political possibility because Johnson likely believes that triggering a no-deal Brexit would regain Brexit Party voters and keep the Conservative Party ahead. The second possibility is that he's not trying to fool the EU, and instead he's bluffing Parliament. By threatening no deal, maybe even via a prorogation of Parliament, he might be hoping that Remainers, maybe even Labour MPs, who withheld their support for May's deal in the hope they might get a second referendum, might be terrified by the looming prospect of no deal. Because of their fear of no deal, they might decide to support a tweaked deal, maybe even a deal with some changes to the political declaration, which the EU has said that they'll be happy to make if he can't get anything done on the backstop. But the only problem here is that even if the deal did get through Parliament without significant changes to the backstop, the Conservatives would probably still lose a load of voters to the Brexit Party, as their supporters likely wouldn't be happy with this compromise to reach a deal. This might be the reason why this isn't Johnson's preferred option. The third option is that Johnson's essentially trying to bluff the electorate, or more specifically, Brexit Party voters. He's hoping that he can charge towards a no deal only to be stopped by Parliament in one way or another, maybe via a no confidence vote and then an election. Then Johnson can campaign on the platform that he is a true Brexiteer and he opted for a no deal Brexit, but then was stopped by the undemocratic Remainer Parliament. He'd be hoping that this would leave the Remain vote split between Labour and the Lib Dems, but that Brexit Party voters would return to the Conservatives, leading Johnson to win a general election landslide, or at least a bigger majority than the Conservatives currently have. With a bigger majority, Johnson can pass some sort of new deal, and politics can move on from Brexit. If this works, Johnson can sell himself as a passionate no-deal Brexiteer, without no deal ever actually happening. If this is Johnson's plan, and a lot of politicos smarter than anyone at TLDR think it is, it's actually a pretty good plan. But there are some issues with it. For starters, Dominic Grieve has admitted that ultimately, if Johnson really wanted to prorogue Parliament and force a no deal, there's no parliamentary manoeuvre that can stop him. That's not to say that it will be easy. Prorogation would be super complicated, possibly unconstitutional, and depend on the Queen's discretion, something which we actually discussed in one of our previous videos. But if Johnson stops short of prorogation, and then turns around to Brexiteer voters and says, "Oh well, Parliament stopped me," some Brexiteers might tell him that he didn't really go for a no deal, because he didn't go the full Monty and prorogue Parliament. There's also a timing issue. According to the Electoral Registration and Administration Act of 2013, any general election needs a minimum of a 15-week campaign period. That means that the general election would need to be called by mid-September at the latest, in order to be completed before the October 31st deadline. Also, according to the Fixed Term Parliament Act, unless 2/3 of MPs agree to a general election, there has to be a 2-week grace period after any no-confidence vote, during which a new government can be formed. This means that any no-confidence vote would have to happen literally at the start of September in order to be finished by October 31st. Given that Parliament only reconvenes from the summer recess on September 3rd, and any no-confidence vote requires a day's notice, this makes the timing of any vote insanely tight. If a general election overflowed past October 31st, there would literally be no government in place to deal with the impact of no deal, which, let's be honest, is mental. Johnson would probably have to ask for an extension in order to get a general election sorted, but this would probably be a bit of a disaster for him, given that his favourite slogan at the moment is "no ifs, no buts, we're leaving on October 31st. However, a pre-Brexit election could still happen. In the 2-week grace period after the no-confidence vote, Remainer MPs in Parliament could temporarily form a government of national unity and request an extension from the EU in order to hold a general election. In this scenario, Johnson gets the campaign as a true Brexiteer, stopped by a Remainer Parliament, and no deal would never actually have to happen. In fact, although it would be politically difficult, if Johnson was really pushed for time, he could try and pass new legislation to allow for a shorter general election campaign period. Although any act would obviously have to go through the House of Lords, which probably would take a while. Anyway, those are the 3 core Johnson bluffs: that he's bluffing the EU, that he's bluffing Parliament, or that he's bluffing the electorate. And again, there's a good chance we've missed something. So if you think there's another possible plan he could be thinking of, let us know in the comments below. His plan might even be a combination of all three options, just going straight for a no deal and just hoping someone falls for the bluff. Like I said at the beginning of the video, we're working hard to try and get to 300,000 subscribers. We first mentioned this drive on Tuesday, and so far you guys have been able to create a significant increase in our subscriber count. So thank you to all of our subscribers, new and old. We have 3 big announcements for when we hit 300,000 subscribers, and we've already recorded one of our 3 announcement videos. So don't make us leave it as private on the channel forever, hit that subscribe button and let us release the video. Thanks for subscribing, and if you have, be sure to hit the bell icon so that you can be notified every time we release a video. And while you're doing stuff for us, you can also find TLDR across a number of social networks. You can find us by simply searching for TLDR. Also, if you want your name to appear at the end of the video just like these people, then be sure to sign up to support us on Patreon.